grandfather was a Ghostbuster. Something was coming and he knew it.
We are talking Ghostbusters Afterlife. This is essentially Ghostbusters 3 directed by Jason Reitman, son of Ivan Reitman, director of the original movie. And Jason Reitman actually had a small cameo in Ghostbusters 2. This obviously ignores the reboot, the 2016 reboot, instead of a continuity, albeit a kind of soft reboot in itself. This is going to be a slightly spoiler review. I am going to refrain from giving away, you know, the exacts of the plot details, but I do want to talk about some stuff, to be honest with you, that's kind of already been revealed in the trailers, mainly kind of relating to the antagonists and the OG Ghostbusters. So this is kind of a spoiler warning if you don't want to know anything, but like I said, I'm not going to go into too much specifics and detail that hasn't really kind of been in the trailers, but you know, there you go. The plot premise is we have a family that is actually the estranged family from Egon Spengler, his daughter, who's now an adult, and her two kids move to this kind of out-of-the-way rural community where Egon seems to have spent his later years, and Egon seems to have gone a little bit kind of rogue in kind of continuity of the original movies, and there may well be a reason for that. And the slime starts to rise, as you might think, and it's up to this younger, new generation of potential Ghostbusters to rise to the challenge. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about what works first of all. Now, I do feel it feels like a continuation from the original two movies. Unlike the first attempt at a reboot, the 2016 one, which felt like, you know, the wacky kind of like crazy characters who are kind of more caricatures and just that kind of the over-the-top sort of silliness that movie had. This still has a foot in somewhat of a grounded reality. One of the things that made the original Ghostbusters work so well was its somewhat kind of like grounded approach. Fantastical things, but it's kind of like you could still, to a point, believe it's happening in the real world. Reactions to things, the kind of like the working man sort of aesthetic the original one had, and that is, I think, preserved here. But it's different because obviously it's not being set in kind of New York, but instead now going for a kind of a, you know, rural town sort of setting. So the tone is a little different, but you still feel it kind of like continues in that same world of that. So I think they do capture that. I have to say, Mckenna Grace, who is essentially our main character, who is Egon Spengler's granddaughter, was fantastic. I thought she really kind of nailed the role, making a compelling performance and an interesting character, and I think one you kind of bought into. I actually also quite liked the mum, even though she doesn't have as really much to do, to be honest with you, and she's a very different character to both Egon and the granddaughter, who were actually sort of almost two peas in a pod. But I still kind of liked her character, and she I think, to me, has that kind of grounded grittiness and you know, world-worn sort of aesthetic that the original Ghostbusters had. It comes from her, that kind of working man style thing, almost a bit like Winston in a way in the original movie. That's the kind of almost like how the mum is in this one. That was good. I love the returning kind of music here is used so effectively, even though the setting is different, and obviously we have this bright sunshine, rural, you know, country town and stuff. It really helps to have this kind of the original, I think it's Elmer Bernstein kind of music, and you know, it really does kind of add that kind of flavour to it. And there are elements here that are both positive and negative in regards to nostalgia, and I'm going to come on to the negative, but nonetheless, you can't help but feel somewhat kind of like nostalgic when you first see kind of Ecto-1, and you'll see Egon's kind of lab and things like that, things that you'd probably expect in a continuation, without, unlike some of the other stuff which we'll talk about, you know, you would expect to see certain kind of familiar things in a kind of essentially a continuation, and I think that there are some things that are handled well. There are some things that I think they went a bit over the top in, but you know, there is some sort of good stuff there. There's a great post-credit scene, which I think really is one of the actual highlights of the movie, to be honest with you. Albeit it's not particularly an important one. There's a really, I think this really honours Harold Ramis, who unfortunately has passed away. But the filmmakers really, I think, handle that quite well. In actual fact, out of all the kind of the OG Ghostbusters, he's probably the one that looms largest in many ways. Even though obviously Harold Ramis is sadly no longer with us. And we get a bit more backstory about our kind of antagonists, who you may have already been kind of introduced to once before. So let me talk about what I think doesn't work with this film. Some of this stuff you've probably already heard, because I have seen some critiques of this, and it's the same. You know, I'm going to agree with a lot of this. There are characters here that feel superfluous. The movie, unlike, say, the original Ghostbusters, which really was an ensemble, this is led by McKenna Grace's character. So you have her as the lead character, whilst every other character is a supporting character. So we have her brother, played by Finn Wolfhard, who you know from Stranger Things, has nothing to do in this film, and has the thinnest of kind of characterizations, and he has this kind of love interest which gets even less. We get McKenna Grace's little friend called Podcast, who, you know, I think probably gets the second amount of screen time. And then we have like Paul Rudd's character. Again, I feel was completely wasted. It feels like Paul Rudd was probably on set for about 4 or 5 days. His character has an impact in the film, but not. It's a kind of it's repeating beats that happened in the first film. But I didn't really feel he added anything to it, to be honest with you. I was actually expecting Paul Rudd's role to be a bit bigger than it actually was, and him to have a bit more impact in the story. But he feels very superfluous. So that's one of the reasons why this movie differs from the first two. Now, one of the critiques with Ghostbusters 2 is that they repeated the same film as the first one, that it was not original. And I've got to be honest with you, this one does it as well. I was surprised at the kind of some of the story elements here. Again, I'm not going to go into specifics, especially concerning our antagonists. And I was like, why are we doing the same thing? Why is this the same thing as the first movie, with some exact story beats that are the same and played out nearly the same? I couldn't understand why this was. And even the newer elements that they added, like we have a character that is mentioned in the first film and has appeared in the video game. Well, that's a new element, and it's kind of done. Nothing's done with it. I thought, oh. Well, that was a little bit of a waste. I thought that could have been a creepier moment. There is a creepy moment with this character, but then that character is kind of sidelined, and let's go back to the nostalgia. And yes, unfortunately, I think this movie tries a little bit too hard to be. There are some things where I think nostalgia works, but it's relying a little bit too heavily, especially on story beats. If you've seen the first movie in regards to the antagonists, unfortunately it's a bit of a rinse and repeat. I was surprised. You know, I have to say as well, this one smacks to me of trying to make kids buy toys. I have a little bit of a problem with our protagonists being so young. It doesn't really seem, I mean, again, part of the appeal of the first movie was you have like these working class guys who are essentially exterminators. They just happen to be, chasing ghosts. It's kind of like this real world thing, and it's kind of like, again, it gave it this ability for us to connect with it. But here we've got 12-year-old kids with essentially nuclear weapons, and I don't know. I mean, I think I would have preferred had we had mixed age groups for our Ghostbusters, but it just seems like, oh look, it's a bunch of kids because we want kids to kind of get into this franchise, and we're going to have these new toys. Oh, we'll have a remote controlled ghost trap. That's going to be a great little, thing that people can buy. Oh look, here's a toy of the Ecto-1 with the sliding door. There's all these things that I think, this just looks like a bit of a toy advert, to be honest, for future products. And I don't know, this cynical part of my brain, unfortunately, was just going, I feel this is just trying to advertise merchandise, really, rather than it kind of being a natural kind of fit to the film. Here's the thing that surprised me most. The OG Ghostbusters, who do show up, I did not think worked. Their scenes felt very uncomfortable. They feel like, I'll be honest with you, they felt that they kind of lost it, especially Bill Murray. And Ray's stance, what they do with him, feels very out of character, especially in regards to his relationship with Egon, and how they essentially fill in the kind of the backstory. It seems very, very out of character for both Ray and Egon, to be honest with you. And I actually think it would have been better not to have them, unfortunately, or at least have them in a different kind of capacity. It just kind of, it feels like they were there for a day on set, and it just didn't work for me, unfortunately, with the exception of the post-credit scene, which I did think was quite good. Again, I don't want to kind of give too much away, but the antagonists here, I thought, okay, so we're repeating some antagonists here. Should we do something different with them? Not really, to be honest. We'll kind of have the same sort of thing as they. Why not have something completely different, or if you're going to have the same antagonists, have them do some different stuff. It was, to be honest with you, I was a little disappointed with this film. I don't think it's bad. I think it is a good one-time watch. And I was thinking about, would I watch it again? And I don't really know if I would bother. I've enjoyed it the once. I've kind of seen it. Some of the jokes were okay. I didn't think it was the horrible humour that the 2016 remake had. But it wasn't as funny as the kind of the originals. The jokes actually kind of felt a little bit kind of a bit too few and far between, to be quite frank with you. And the pacing in this movie as well, I think it might be a bit slow for the younger audiences. I didn't mind it actually, because I quite like character work. But I was thinking, would my nephews? I've got a 10 and an 8-year-old nephew, and I'm thinking, would they enjoy it? I don't know if they would be bored in the first hour. And again, there's we have similar elements. Oh look, it's our first ghost. It's this kind of cute looking ghost. We'll have our first kind of thing with that, and then we'll have essentially a slightly different but very, very similar main antagonist kind of confrontation. Yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a missed opportunity, I think. There's elements here that I think worked well, and I think it used nostalgia in some aspects well, but in others it just felt like a waste of an opportunity. Not as bad as the 2016 remake, in my opinion, and at least it felt in universe, but there could have been more done with it. There you go, that's my opinion. So it's a 5 out of 10. It's an average film, if you want my honest opinion. Not bad, but a good one-time watch. But I doubt I'll ever watch this again. What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.